سَبِيلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُمْ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. And if you are in doubt, talking to the skeptics, the humanists, the dodgy Muslims, yeah, everybody. If you're in doubt that this book has been sent to our servant, referring to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then bring one chapter like it. Bring a single chapter like it. And call on your witnesses and supporters besides God, if you are indeed truthful. Now, the exegetes, the mufassirun, which basically means those who explain the Quran, says that this indicates something about the special nature of the Arabic language. It's unique, it's inimitable, cannot emulate it, cannot copy it. Now, this is also supported by Western evidence. For example, Professor Bruce Lawrence of Duke University, he says in his book, The Quran, a Biography, as tangible signs, Quranic verses are expressive of an inexhaustible truth. They signify meaning, laid within meaning, light upon light, miracle after miracle. Even the Reverend R. Bosworth Smith, in his book, Muhammad and Mohammedanism, he says, the Quran is a miracle of purity of style, of wisdom and of truth. It is one miracle claimed by Muhammad, and indeed a miracle it is. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is because this links to the definition of what a miracle actually is. What did we say? We said a miracle is an act of impossibility. It's an event that lies outside the productive capacity of the nature. Now let's bring this into the context of the Quran. We have a book called the Quran, an ancient document 1400 years old. People cannot emulate the stylistic features, the rhetoric, the eloquence, and the structural features of the dynamic text, which we call the Quran. Cannot emulate this. This is almost a consensus amongst Eastern and Western Orientalists and linguists. It was even the consensus of the linguists par excellence 1400 years ago, which we know were the Arabs at the time of revelation. And this has a historical context. The famous Arabic historian Ibn Rashid, he states that the best thing to be was to be a father with a son, or to actually have rhetoric and be able to express yourself in the Arabic language at that time. So they were like Arabic linguists par excellence. So if there's a consensus, then surely it must be a miracle, because people have exhausted, and listen to this very carefully, people have exhausted all of the finite letters of the Arabic language and the grammatical rules and the words, and they cannot produce the structural features of Arabic language. So it's an act of impossibility. So it is actually an event which lies outside the productive capacity of nature. So let's think about this again. We have Quran. It's an event. The Quran is an expression, it's an event. But this lies outside the productive capacity of the Arabic language, its nature. And we go to the nature of the language, of the event, the Quran, we exhaust all words and letters, but we can't produce Quran. Surely this is an impossibility. It's like me taking my nice watch and, I don't know, taking the main piece and putting it back together, giving a shake, and creating the gentleman in front of me. This is impossible. It's impossible. How? But you saw the event, and this was the nature of the event. Yes, we cannot explain it naturalistically. So it indicates we need a supernaturalistic explanation. So this is why the Muslims are intellectually convinced with the Quran as a divine text. So it goes back and it basically justifies our premises, our worldview, which was what? God is all-knowing, all-wise. 2, human beings are not. 3, then it's rational and beneficial to follow what God has says. And we have shown this. We have shown greater reasons to believe in the Quranic discourse. My third argument. I know there's going to be plenty of Q&A and we'll entertain this after. My third argument is about morality. It's a very exciting argument that does raise the temperature, so please take your jackets off. We live in a world for the need of objective ethics and morality. We live in a world in a need for objective political ethics. Why do I say this? Well, we see in a post-9/11 world, especially in Britain, and some may argue in parts of America, that our civil liberties and rights are being diminished somewhat, just in the name of perceived threats. Okay? You may disagree with me, but let's disagree after. Now the point is this, is that I I would argue that the Islamic position on morality and ethics actually transcends this. And it creates a stronger worldview. Because isn't it interesting, for example, let's take economics. I'm going to discuss this later, but let's take this for now. America was saying to China all these years, don't do business. Okay? Enter into the capitalist paradigm. Don't do business. But what happens? Credit crunch? Let's break our principles. Let's start to do business now. Do you see my point? So the issue is, we need objective morality and objective political ethics, because we have seen the past few years, in order to preserve our principles, we break them. What does this say about our principles in the first place? Think about this very carefully. In order to preserve our worldview or our principles, we break them. And this to me shows that there's something wrong with the principles in the first place. That's why there's a need for objective morality. And one of the ways of doing this is adopting the Islamic worldview. And let me argue. Because without God, in absence of God, there is no objective morality. There is no objective political ethics. There is no true meaning to even the things we utter. Think about this. And before I go into the morality argument, let me just spice it up by talking about purpose. You know, we all believe there's purpose to things, right? This chair that you're sitting on obviously has a purpose. What is it? Anyone's attentive enough to tell me? Sorry?
You sit on it.
You sit on the chair. Well, most of us do. Yeah? So we sit on a chair. So it has a purpose, but the chair is not very dynamic. It's a very simple structure, doesn't have any cognitive capacities, it's not emotive, you know, it's not a living thing. And funny enough, there's also a moth. Everyone knows what a moth is? It's like a fairy fly. Yeah? There's a moth. There's a moth in a forest, and it sits on a tree. And what it does, it actually drinks the sap of that tree, the juice. There's another moth that sits underneath that moth, and what does it do? Anyone know? Biologists amongst us? It drinks the poo of the first moth. That's what it does. Its job is to eat the excrement of the first moth. Because if it didn't, the poo would trickle down, and the ants will come up and eat and have the first moth as its main dinner. So that second moth has a purpose, is to drink poo. So we attribute purpose to things that don't move, they don't have any cognitive capacity like a chair. We attribute purpose to things like a moth that if 5 million of them were to die, we wouldn't even call it genocide, we wouldn't even care. And 3 minutes ago you didn't even know about this moth. Thank God for the BBC. So the point is, we don't even attribute purpose to ourselves, which we're more dynamic. Surely, if we could attribute purpose to these things, we should be attributing purpose to ourselves. And the reason I'm saying this is because what do the scientists say? This universe is going to suffer a what? Heat death. Everything's going to be lifeless, die. It's going to go. Maybe it's billions of years away, but it's going to happen. So what does this really mean conceptually? Think about this. We're in a sinking ship. We are on the Titanic, brothers and sisters and friends. So what's the point of reshuffling the deck chair? Or shaking the hand of the old lady? Or offering myself a nice glass of milk? We're in a sinking ship. So it's ephemeral, it's empty, it's meaningless, it's dark, it's devoid of any true higher purpose. So let's go back to morality. In absence of God, there is no conceptual anchor that transcends human subjectivity. Think about this. There is no conceptual anchor that transcends human subjectivity. Who believes that killing innocent babies is objectively 100% morally wrong? Okay, most of us. Let's try that one again. Maybe something a bit more controversial, and it's the study of ethics and morals. Who believes that killing 6 million Jews in the 1940s is objectively morally wrong? There's more hands there. That's quite interesting. That's quite interesting. Now, what I mean by objective is if the Nazis were to take over the whole world and they were to convince us that it's okay to do that, it would still be morally wrong. It's outside of the human self. Objective. But in order for us to appreciate this disposition or this conception of